My guest today is an award-winning coach and has the #1 book on Amazon in his category. You're going to love the interview today with Coach Kenny Simpson on God Dots Radio. Welcome to God Dots Radio, bringing you unforgettable stories of divine connections. These are real stories about real people who experienced a coincidence so amazing, God must be in it. I'm your host, the God Dots guy, Kevin Norberg. Hey, I'm so glad you found us. Thanks for tuning in to God Dots Radio today. You're going to really enjoy today's guest, Coach Kenny Simpson. He's the head football coach at Southside High School in Arkansas. He took a program that had won only 8 games in 5 seasons and had been on a 20-plus game losing streak. Coach Kenny took that team to the playoffs for 4 consecutive seasons, and he won 2 conference titles in the past 3 years. For his efforts, he was named Conference Coach of the Year. He was named as a finalist for Hooten's Coach of the Year and was also selected to coach in the first FCA Texas-Arkansas All-Star Showdown. Now, Kenny wrote a book about leadership as a football coach. Now, you might be into football, you might love sports, you might be a real enthusiast, or you may not know anything about the game. It doesn't matter, because the game of football is like the game of life. Leadership is leadership, and Kenny's principles apply in both venues. So Kenny's here today to talk to us about all of that, tell us all of the dots that God has connected in his career to bring him to where he is today. I'm sure you're going to enjoy this interview, and here's Coach Kenny. Hey, it's great to have Kenny Simpson, Coach Simpson, with us today. High school football coach, a lot of awards. He's going to tell us a little about his story, how God's been connecting the dots for him. Kenny, it's great to have you. Thanks for coming on God Dots.
Well, man, I really appreciate it. And it's, humbling whenever you get brought on to any kind of podcast. So I appreciate you having me.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I've known your mom for a while, met her through some business connections, and those were other kind of God dots, but that God dot got me to you, which is a cool God dot. I found your story on her Facebook page, so really cool. I want to get to know...
Lady.
Yeah, go ahead. What?
Oh, she's a special lady. My mom is a lot of impact to who I am. So. Yeah,
awesome. She sure has a lot of good things to say about you, so I'm excited to have you. Tell us a little bit about Kenny. What's your story? How did you end up coaching, and tell us a little bit about your past.
Sure. Well, I grew up in a military home. My father, very proud of his service to our country in the Air Force, but with that, a lot of times comes a lot of moving. So I've actually lived in multiple states and a couple different countries. We lived in Italy when I was really young, and then my parents had me when they were young as well, and so they were settling their life. And my senior year, just due to circumstances, they were starting new businesses and wanted me to be around the same school I had been. I went to 3 different high schools, and so I didn't get to live with them my senior year, which probably led me down some paths I would have rather not gone. But it just kind of, when you're young and you're making your own decisions, sometimes you don't always choose the wisest choices. So I knew in the back of my head I wanted to go to Harding University. It's a Christian school, and mainly I wanted to be around Christian people. I was smart enough to understand that you kind of are who you're around, and I figured if I could put myself around good people, then maybe I would do good things. And it worked out for me. I'm not as familiar with God dots, but one of the things I do think God has blessed me with for sure is meeting my wife at Harding. We met young. We were both freshmen in college, and so we've been together now more in my life than I was without her. I've hit that kind of tipping point in your life when I've been married or with my wife more than I was without her. So it's kind of a cool deal to grow up together with a special person. And, she for sure is one of the people that has kept me going the right direction. She's kept me accountable and given me somebody I want to do good things for her. We have 3 children. And so we had our first at 25, and then have had several or two more. I've got a little girl who's 14 and growing up quicker every day, it seems like. And two young boys. I've got a 12-year-old boy who will be going into the seventh grade next year, and then I've got a first grade boy. And so very proud of all of that. And kind of background through coaching wise, that's my personal life, but coaching wise, I went to Harding and graduated, and we moved to to Huntsville, Alabama. I coached there for 3 years at Madison Academy, which is a Christian school. Had a great time there and learned a lot. Actually coached basketball and football. As a young coach, you do what they tell you to do and try to do the best you can. Met some great people and some great young kids I got to coach. Moved to Montgomery, Alabama. I was there for 3 years as an assistant coach, and then for 3 years as a head coach, and then really enjoyed my time there. First time being a head coach at 27 years old, and so made a lot of mistakes as a young coach as you're learning how to handle people and how to handle coaches and situations. And so from there we moved to where we are now, which is Southside Batesville, Arkansas, a place I had never heard of before. But we wanted to get back around a place we could send our children. We wanted to be in a place near Harding, which Searcy's not very far from here. We actually attend the same church that we did when we were in college. And so that was a big drive to us, maybe another dot, God dot, where we just wanted to be around those people. We felt that they were really God's kingdom, were really living it out to the best of their ability. We wanted to be around them. Yeah. So we came back here. The job I took, we were 0 3 years, pretty much. They were not very good. They were struggling. New program. It was definitely a rebuild. This is year 9 I just completed. We won our conference this year. We've won it a couple other years. And so I've been blessed to be at the right place at the right time. And I think in your show we call that God dots. I think he has blessed me tremendously with great administration here and great kids. And, of course, just a great place to be.
Awesome. Yeah, those connections that you have, some of those can draw you back again. And like you say, you kind of went back to where your relationship started with your wife and where you met and the church you were in. And that's really cool.
And I'm getting to the point, we're about to cycle through where my daughter is saying she wants to go to Harding. So that's kind of an eye-opener in that cycle of life. It's hard to believe she may be there soon. Yeah,
it comes full circle really fast, doesn't it?
It does.
Yeah. Hey, tell me about what were the dots that connected you to where you are now? I mean, how did you get hired and how did all that happen? That had to have been a God dot.
I think, well, and in the coaching world, I don't know how many of your listeners know a whole lot about that, but usually people are not in one place very long in this profession. You either win and you move up, or you don't win and they move you out. It's kind of how that tends to go. And so, at Madison Academy, it was a great place to be, and I was able to learn from a lot of guys. They were rebuilding the football program there, and I was just a small part of it. And then I moved to Montgomery, struggling football program, was able to have some success rebuilding that. And so I think both of those things really set me up professionally to take this job, because this was definitely a very, very difficult job, and you had to be prepared and know kind of what to do. I think God had been preparing me along the way so that I could jump into a situation like this and have a little success. We've still got a long way to go, and I don't really consider success as just wins on the field, but I feel like we're changing the culture of these kids, and it's enabling me to reach a lot of different kids. Going from private to public schools was also a big change, something my wife and I really wanted to do. We wanted to, I got into teaching as a mission field, and I wanted to be able to reach young men and young women and show them how to attempt to follow Christ as best you could. And going to a public school allows you to do that. There's a big mission field out there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you can be such a powerful influence on so many lives. There are a lot of kids out there who need a a surrogate dad or, a father figure in their life. And as a coach, you have a real chance one-on-one to do that. And so I know God's connecting lots and lots of dots every season for you.
And having a spouse, my wife works at the school with me now and is basically the mom. She'll tell me stories. The kids will go visit her. She's our media specialist here. And so they go to her with their problems, and it's been neat to watch her grow in that role as well. And we're now at the age where these are about the age of our children, so we literally are a lot of their father or mother figures, and it's been a cool and sometimes humbling experience to go through.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, some of the things that I picked up from your resume that named 4A2 Conference Coach of the Year, named as a finalist for is that Hooten's Coach of the Year?
Yeah, Arkansas's got a high school publication.
Okay, so Coach of the Year, man, that's awesome. The All-Star nominee for the 4A2, that was 2016 and 2019 this season.
It's pretty neat, when you get into coaching that sometimes those things happen, and it's been a neat experience for sure. I've also, along with being Coach of the Year, I've been 0-10. And so when you jump into situations like this, you've got to understand it's going to be rocky. Yeah. And so I think you've got to be having enough character. Our kids did, and our administration did, to go through that. Mm-hmm. But you got to go through those dark times to really enjoy the good times that come down the road.
Yeah, isn't it true? I mean, the valleys make you appreciate the mountaintops.
Absolutely.
If you were just on mountaintops all the time, you'd start to not pay attention to the view. Yeah, but when you're down in that valley looking up, that's where you really learn it.
Yeah, your character is built through losses, I really feel, and then hopefully over time you're able to turn those into successes.
I got two here. Named Montgomery Advertiser's All Metro Coach of the Year, voted 4A Region 2 Coach of the Year. That was back in 2010. And then all of this whole journey of doing this led you to write a book. Yeah, tell us about that. This is a cool story.
Right here. It's I didn't ever think I would be an author, and if you had me as a teacher, you probably would never have thought I would be an author either. But like we mentioned, I've been through good and bad, and I've seen good and bad, and my goal is, as I'm becoming an older coach, is to help out the next generation. I think the game of football has so many values that you can teach, and so I want to pass that along to this next generation of coaches coming through, and just let them know really a lot of the mistakes that I made and a lot of things that we did that worked. It's almost a manual, really, for the next generation of coaches, and it can probably apply in other areas of your life, but it is definitely geared for a coach. How are you going to take over a program, going through the interview process? How are you going to prepare yourself when you get it? How are you going to build your support staff around you? Things that I had to learn the hard way. When you're 27 and you get that job, you're not ready, and so maybe this can help them along their journey.
Cool. It sounds like this is the book that you wish you could have read when you were starting out. Yes. So instead of reading it, you wrote it. That's cool.
That it was neat. It was definitely a fun process, and I'm not a writer. My mother-in-law is an English teacher, and so she went through and edited it. I had my mother, Kathy. She read it and just kind of looked for different ways I might be able to phrase things. And then my spouse, Jamie, is a graphic designer. And so she designed the cover, made it look good. Cool. And did a lot of the formatting, things that I would never have been able to accomplish on my own.
That's awesome. So you had a team.
Yes.
Building a different team.
those three ladies are pretty much involved in anything good that I accomplish. So.
That's usually true. All of us, we have that. We have the people that are standing there on the sidelines, right, but they're the ones that are coaching us. And so you got coaches too, and that's a good thing. That's a good lesson to learn.
I didn't have a lot of people want to stand next to me when we were 0-10, but those three ladies did. Yeah, and they're also with me when we are Coach of the Year or whatever other awards may come. So.
Well, the book's on Amazon. We'll put a link in the show notes for people to look it up. Tell us what's happened to the book since you launched it. And it came out, September?
No, it
October?
actually just released about a little bit less than a month ago.
Okay, November.
Right. Now, of course, in football season, I don't have time to write. I actually wrote it over multiple years, but had it finished in June. But with football cranking up, I didn't have a lot of time to, get it out there or get it published. So we waited till the season was over, which we were done around middle of November. And so the book released then, and it's been out for about a month. And I think it's doing pretty well. It was a bestseller for a little bit. I don't really know how all that stuff works. And really, I was just honored that anyone would even want to read it. I just want to try to help different people. And anytime you think about writing a book, I always think of like somebody who's a great person, and I don't put myself with them. So it was kind of a humbling experience to actually put it out there on paper because there's a lot of really great coaches in our profession that I look up to, and they've commented back to me and just told me how much they appreciate us doing for this for other coaches. But it's a little bit, I don't know, I guess the word is humbling, as it really is to put out a book and have people look over that I know are probably way more talented than I am in our profession.
Well, you were in some good company there on Amazon. I think I saw you were number one, and the number 2 book was the New England Patriots coach.
Yeah, Bill Belichick may be a little better coach than me, but at least
he's up the ladder a little bit as far as the pay scale. But man, you've learned the same lessons that he's learned, and in your own way, and you're connecting dots for a lot of young coaches that are coming along that want to do what you're doing. So they're trying to climb that ladder that you climbed, and you're helping them up, and that's a cool thing.
And you need a support system. I've had several coaches reach out to me after the book and just talk about how it maybe helped them. At least one little thing helped them through a tough time they're going through, or they're about to become a head coach and maybe it prepared them for something that's coming. And that was the purpose of the book. And I think if you're not a football coach, it may be a quick, easy read and you may get something out of it, but it was definitely geared for them. It was geared for the younger version of me, and that's why I wrote it. I'm actually in the process of writing a couple other books that I'm excited about, but we'll see how this one goes first and just kind of take it slow. So
I think that probably some of the most valuable stuff you can write is when you write to your younger self. Here's what I would have told myself 20 years ago if I'd known back then what I know now, and that's kind of what you're doing for the young coaches that are just getting started, and you're helping them along.
And I hope so. One of the chapters actually is titled "Mistakes That I've Made," and I only list a few. I could list probably a book full, but I tried to list a few mistakes that I made and how I would go back and do that different if I could do that again. And we don't always get those opportunities, but maybe it'll help somebody deter them from making those mistakes.
What's the full title of the book? The subtitle too.
It's Find a Way. I'll put it up here next to the screen. Yeah. Find a Way. What I wish I had known. Had I been when I became a football coach. And just things I wish I had known. And there's multiple chapters in there. Some are very specific to football, but then there are others that just talk about leadership in general and how to use people around you. I struggle a lot of times being a micromanager and wanting to do it all myself, but sometimes the hardest thing is to teach someone else and then allow them to use the gifts that God's blessed them with, to be a big part of your program. And so talk about that in a couple of chapters too.
Yeah, I think that's a cool lesson to learn as a leader, any kind of leader. When you can delegate, and then you begin to see the people under you take on those responsibilities, and they start doing it better than you sometimes.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I've got multiple coaches that have so many great skills, and when I learned to use them, our program became better. And it for me, it was never a pride thing. It just was I didn't understand how to do it, but how to have those hard conversations with them and explain what we want it to be about, but also allow them to use the talents God's blessed them with. Right now, I pretty much coach our coaches, and they coach the players. It's just the way it changes when you become a head coach.
Yeah, that's awesome, and that's letting go is hard when you've worked so hard to kind of get there and take the reins, and then letting go of the reins, that's a sign of a great leader, when you can bring those other leaders up under you and you start to see the potential in them. Hey, I see myself in all of these people.
Right. Well, and it's trying to find what they're great at and then allow them to shine. I think that's what I found when I was at other places, when they would do different things, how I wanted to be treated when I was an assistant coach, and tried to take some of those lessons and move them forward.
Well, we've talked about the God dots in your life and in your story, and what were some of the God dots, individual God dots, that maybe you could tell us about that you've experienced from coaching? Maybe somebody was a God dot to you. Maybe you were a God dot to them, and helped them.
Sure. Yeah, I think anytime you're in a profession like coaching, where you're around young people, there are stories. I could tell story after story about young people that have influenced me. And I think in the book I mentioned one. We had just won probably the biggest game we had ever won here at that point, back in 2016. And I'm cleaning up. We were celebrating. I'm getting ready to walk out the door. It's probably 11:30, almost midnight. I'm getting ready to leave, and I hear two kids in the locker room, and I kind of just poke my head in. I don't want to interrupt them, but our starting quarterback is in there quoting scripture to a young man who was obviously distraught with some family issues, was praying for him. And as a coach, I just went, how humbling is that? I don't do that like I should, and I've got a 17-year-old kid who is doing that, and I've got lots of stories of young kids who have impacted me, or coaches who I've mentored underneath, and then now I've got some coaches that that work for me now. They're head coaches other places. It's been pretty neat to watch them have great success on their own, and they'll call in and ask questions from me. And it's been pretty cool. Just the relationships in this business, I think, are what people that maybe you don't coach don't understand, is how close you get with your players if you're a good coach, with your players and with your assistants, and watching them go on to have success. And now I've got former players who are principals, who are doctors, who are, multiple things that I'm so proud of. And it doesn't always go good. There are some that made poor choices, and so that impacts you as a coach as well. But I think that if you're in this business long enough and you don't see the relationship part of it, then you're going to struggle probably.
Yeah, it's really, you're with a team, especially, you're building a family. It's like a family unit.
Yes,
and,
sir.
So all of those positives and negatives that come with family. It's all of those teachable moments, and how do you deal with strife and problems, but then all of the successes and things you can celebrate together and lift each other up when somebody's down.
The character you build. I've had teams here that they've only known winning, and I've had teams before that they had never known winning, and they went through some tough situations, and trying to teach them that we're proud of them regardless of what the score says, that they learn the lessons that are a lot more valuable than a silly game of football. That's what we're trying to teach, and when the kids get that and they understand that, and they're willing to fight for each other and work for each other, work for something more than themselves, that you're starting to go the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Any specific stories you want to leave with us?
Well, I'll say a couple of things that in my experience have shown to be true with kids and with adults. Is I would say to try to be intentional about being around the right type of people. I think that I made choices to go with other people, I would have been influenced in a way that maybe wasn't the right way. And so we spent a lot of time with our players about making sure they're in the right place with the right people. It doesn't guarantee things will go well, but it does usually lead to them making smarter decisions, and then being able to influence people for good instead of being influenced for bad. Mm-hmm. The other thing I talk with our kids a lot about, and I don't know if this plays in with God dots. I kind of think it does. Is we tell them, are you going to be a thermometer or are you going to be a thermostat? And I think this is something I pulled off the internet, but thermometers simply reflect the culture around them. If it's bad, they're bad. If it's good, they're good. A thermostat can change the atmosphere around it. And you've got to make decisions of which one you're going to be. Are you going to be somebody who is going to do right when it's not the right thing? And if you are, then you can become a God dot or an example to other people. Or are you just simply going to reflect what's around you and be a thermostat or thermometer? So those are two things we try to talk to our kids about. I don't know if that'll help any listeners or anything, but it's something I've learned in my life is if I'm around good people, I usually do good things. If I'm not, I don't. But you do want to try your best to always be putting out God's light, and you hope that maybe it hits in the right place, and then God will do what he wants with it once it does.
That's awesome. I like that metaphor, the thermostat versus the thermometer. Too many people, I think our culture is driven by thermometers. You know, everybody's just looking around them and they're copying whatever behavior they're seeing or whatever they pay attention to.
And especially teenagers, it's so susceptible at that age to, I know I was, and I know they are too.
Yeah. Well, you're doing the Lord's work, man. It's awesome to hear your story and what's happening with your program and with your kids, and you're experiencing those kinds of successes because you paid the price and you built what needed to be built to get to where you are. And I'm so glad that you're sharing it with the young coaches out there. If we've got any young coaches or wannabe coaches, maybe you're a player right now and you're listening to this and you want to coach someday, get a copy of Kenny's book. We'll put the link in the show notes. It'll also be on wherever you like to listen to podcasts or on the YouTube channel. We'll put the links there too, to the book.
I appreciate you having me on. Thank you so much.
Yeah, Kenny. We'll connect with you again, and thanks for the time, and thanks for sharing your God dots with us.
Well, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Kenny. Bless you.
Thank you.
Hey, don't you just love Kenny's spirit? He is such a humble, practical, down-to-earth guy who has some real insight into leadership. And I really appreciate Kenny sharing with us today. He did give me a follow-up after our interview that because of the book that he wrote, he's had several opportunities to speak at some coaching clinics and has met some really great people by authoring that book. The book is actually going to be used at Monmouth University in their coaching football course. So congratulations to you, Coach, for what's happening in your life, for how God's connecting the dots for you, and for sharing that with us. If you're interested in learning more about Kenny's book, we'll put a link in our show notes. You can check it out for yourself. It's not just about the game of football, it's about the game of life and the leadership skills you need to navigate both. So hope you check out his book. Speaking of God dots, if you have dots that God has connected in your life, we'd love to hear about them. We have a Facebook group. It's free. You can join. You go on facebook.com/groups/GodDots, and you'll find us there. You can join, become a member. You can post. You can read posts. We'd love to hear from you about some of the dots God's been connecting in your story. Let us celebrate that with you. That's what we love to do in the God Dots group. So come join us on Facebook. Subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss an episode. Looking forward to speaking with you again next time. And in the meantime, remember, just like Coach Kenny Simpson, God is looking out for you. Thanks for listening to God Dots Radio. If you enjoyed today's program and want to know more, check out our website, goddots.org. Please subscribe to the podcast to stay connected. And to read and submit stories, be sure to join our free Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/GodDots. Join me, the God Dots guy, next time for more unforgettable stories of divine connections on God Dots Radio. God Dots is a ministry of God Dots International. And don't forget, God is looking out for you.